Good morning, everyone. Can you guys hear me? I see we have Holly, Mir, Audrey, and myself, and Kristen, of course. Holly and Miss Audrey Perry, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hi again, Audrey.
Well, and the second housekeeping item, can you guys see my screen that it says working with an interpreter? Can you see that?
Yep.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming to this training and for dedicating 1 hour of your day. Again, I'll make it the most worthwhile for you and also make it effective. Again, thank you for dedicating an hour. In this time of days, an hour is valuable, so I appreciate the gift of time. So thank you. Vernon Bruce is here. Hello, Vernon. Appreciate you coming. The topic of this training is working with an interpreter. I was just saying to the attendees who were here a bit earlier that I appreciate the time of the gift of time. I appreciate it, so I'll make it the most effective usage of your time. This training is supposed to last an hour, but we'll try to make it a little bit less and give you a few minutes back. The topic of this training is working with an interpreter. A few housekeeping items is that, again, this training will last an hour. Feel free to ask any questions during the training. However, I may only take a few during the training for the sake of time. There'll be a Q&A session at the end of the training. So feel free to submit these questions at the end if you wish. And you can also submit them via chat, or you can raise your hand. At the end of the training, I'll submit the presentation via email so that you can always have them. Have it at the, for record keeping. A little bit about me is that my name is Ricardo El Bosque. I may know some of you. I have about 15 years of interpreting experience and translation experience. I'm a certified medical interpreter. I'm a certified social services interpreter. I'm also a certified court interpreter. I work for a couple of school districts, police department, and law offices doing translation and interpreting. But I'm also for my 8 to 5 job, I'm actually a software engineer. I work with computer systems. I work for the state of Washington. I do business analysis and just get program up and running. So that's what I do most of my day. But a passion of mine is interpreting and language facilitation. So that's a little bit about me. One of the things that I also love is movies. Movies is actually one of the things that I enjoy the most. And I would like to begin with an icebreaker. Do you guys all know who Bill Murray is? Do you guys think of a movie of Bill Murray? What is the best Bill Murray movie in your opinion ever made? Can you guys think of one?
I went straight to What About Bob?
Oh, I know that one. I know that one. What About Bob is a good one. Well, my favorite one for, and again, being guilty of being a cliche is Ghostbusters. I love Ghostbusters, of course. Anybody likes any other movie from Bill Murray?
I love Ghostbusters too, and I've watched it with my 5-year-old. But and now they got a new Ghostbusters that's also equally awesome, and he makes a cameo in it. Bill Murray's still in it, so.
Oh yeah, exactly. The new one. Yeah.
That's good stuff. But I'm a Caddyshack fan.
Oh, that's a good one too.
Yeah.
I was just going to say Vernon, Caddyshack. I'm joining late, but I see Bill Murray and I think Caddyshack.
Yeah, he just too many timeless jokes in Caddyshack that people still crack the same joke.
Yep.
That's a good one.
Exactly. Well, one of the ones that is not as popular as the other one, but it's actually, I actually like it, is Lost in Translation. Have you guys seen that one?
I put that in the chat.
Oh, you did? Oh, excellent. I didn't see that one. I didn't see it. Yeah, you did. Excellent. Good job, Audrey. Yeah, Lost in Translation. That one has a very young Scarlett Johansson on the movie. I don't know if you guys remember that one. But so this movie is actually pretty good. It actually was released in 2003 and it stars Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson. And it's the story of an aging actor and a young college graduate, and they met in Tokyo and they became friends. But one of my favorite scenes in this movie takes place at the beginning of the film. And so just to put a little bit of context, so the character of Bill Murray's career is in decline, it's not going very well. But he's offered $2 million to travel to Japan and film a commercial for a whiskey, right? And the director speaks Japanese only, and Murray only speaks English. So they have to communicate through an interpreter. And the scene is pretty interesting. So let's take a look at what happens, how the director uses an interpreter in this situation. And at the end, I want to hear your feedback on what happened, okay? So here it is. Give me, just put on the chat if you can hear it, just to make sure you guys are listening to the video as well.
そしてテーブルの上にはサントリーウイスキーがあります。
Okay, good. Okay.
わかりますね。感情を込めてゆっくりとカメラを見て優しく、そしてあなたの古い友達に会うように言ってください。カサブランカのボギーのように君の瞳に乾杯。サントリータイム。
He wants you to turn, look in camera. Okay?
That's all he said?
Yes. Turn to camera.
All right, does he want me to turn from the right or turn from the left?
彼の方はもう準備ができてます。それでスタートがかかった時にカメラの方に振り向く時に左から振り向けばいいのか右から振り向けばいいのか、その辺のところはいかがなさいましょうかっていうことなんですけれども。
どっちだっていいんだよ。もう関係ないんだから、そんなもの。時間がないんだよ、ボブさん。ね？だからもう早くあなたもうテンション上げてカメラを見て、カメラ目線でゆっくりとね、パッションがカメラ目にはパッションだよ。分かった？
And with intensity. Okay?
Is that everything? I mean, it seemed like he said quite a bit more than that.
あなたの言ってることはウイスキーのことだけじゃないんだから。わかる？古い友達に会うように優しくジェントリーにね、そして心から湧き上がってくるテンション、これ忘れちゃダメだよ。
Like an old friend and into the camera.
Okay.
わかった？あなたはウイスキーを愛してます。It's サントリータイム。OK？
Okay.
OK？ はい、本番！用意スタート！
For relaxing times, make it Suntory time.
カットカットカットカットカット。本当に分かってんなんだ、とぼけちゃって。これはサントリーの響きだよ。高いんだから、サントリーの中で一番。もっと高級な気持ちでね、日常的なお酒じゃないんだよ。
Could you do it slower?
最高な気持ちで。
More intensity.
サントリータイム。本番！用意スタート！
For relaxing times, make it Suntory time.
カットカットカットカット！
So what do you guys thought of the video? What kind of lesson can we get about the usage of an interpreter through this video? Let's see.
They will often take the many words that are used and condense them down into kind of a bite-sized nugget that can be easily relayed. So you're losing a lot of detail from the before and the after.
Absolutely. And you saw Bill Murray was very, at times, very confused, right? He seemed very like, wow, I feel like I'm getting all the information filtered or something, you know? So yeah, you can tell that he was feeling a little bit lost a few times because there was a lot of information conveyed and he was only getting 1 or 2 words. So he seemed very confused.
The perfect guy for that role, though. It was hilarious.
Exactly. Well, if you guys have a chance to watch a Bill Murray movie, feel free to do that this weekend. Well, thank you again for indulging me on that video. So we'll start a little bit of with the curriculum. So what is an interpreter? We're going to go over what it is an interpreter in a very succinct way. We're going to review what types of interpreters we have in the school setting, what's considered a qualified interpreter, and how to use an interpreter effectively. Those are the main core subjects we're going to review this evening. So I'm just going to put it out there. What is an interpreter? Can anybody tell me in a very few words what is the purpose of an interpreter, or what is an interpreter? The definitions that are before you are pretty good definitions, but I want to hear from you. What is, in a very one word, what is an interpreter?
Helping people communicate.
Absolutely. Excellent. I think that is the main role of an interpreter. You nailed it there. I think the purpose of an interpreter is to really facilitate communication between 2 people or more people who speak different languages. Again, whether the conversation takes over the phone or in person, or nowadays in kind of the post-pandemic world, I think we still do a lot of video remote interpreting. So that's the job of an interpreter. Again, you nailed it. Facilitate communication and allow communication to occur. And an interpreter is a crucial element in the effective communication we're dealing with people of different languages. We see interpreters in the United Nations. I think that's one of the most biggest venues that we can see interpreters. They have interpreters from many languages. We see them in conferences. We see them in the Olympics or world sporting events. We see many interpreters that way. One thing that I want you to keep in mind, and this is one of the biggest takeaways from this training, is that interpreter is not the same as a translator. Although the 2 skills or 2 categories are closely related linguistic disciplines, they are sometimes rarely performed by the same people. The difference in skills, training, aptitude, and even the language knowledge are substantial, and only a few people can do both very, very well on a professional level. And on the surface, the difference between interpreter and translation really is only the medium. The interpreter, again, translates orally, while the translator translates or interprets written text. So I want you guys to take this away from this training, that the differences between a translator and an interpreter are different. And so I want to ask you guys a question. What in your opinion, what is the skill that is hardest to master, you think? And again, there's not a wrong answer, but what is the hardest skill to master between an interpreter and a translator?
Interpreter.
Yeah, definitely interpreter, and I would agree with you. I think with being a translator, I think it's hard, but I think being an interpreter is even more difficult, because again, you have to have memory skills. You have to also be quick on your feet. You have to be concentrated 100% of the time. And again, the difference in skills are arguably greater in an interpreter. The translator can be in their home, drinking a cup of coffee while translating, and if he has a question about or a problem with a word, this translator can look it up on the dictionary. However, when you're interpreting, you have to render the language or the method immediately, right? You have to convey the information immediately to the recipient. So you have to be quick. So yeah, so again, to agree with you is only talented translators can be interpreters. And I think Beatriz is here. She can also assess that being an interpreter is much difficult. What do you think, Betty?
Yeah, it takes, way more to be an interpreter. Like you said, sometimes you have to stop and think because there are words that, you are not familiar with. While, when you are doing translation, that gives you enough time to get prepared for the, translation. And like you say, search up words that you might not be able to. And that's one of the things that with the interpretation we ask for when it's going to be, IEPs, evaluations, with those documents, prior to those meetings to get prepared, get familiar with some terminology that we might not be aware of. So it's really, it's like you say, it takes a lot of memory, concentration when you're doing that, because once if something else is happening around you, you might just, lose track of what you're doing.
Yeah, and again, one of the things that, especially in a school setting, interpreters have to be doing with people and parents. And you can also be placed in stressful situations and sometimes in emotionally difficult situations. So it is the job of the interpreter to remain calm and impartial. And they have to be resilient. I mean, and it goes without saying, they also have to remain neutral and confidential of the information they are receiving. So yes, I agree with both of you to those statements. Because of that, because the skill of an interpreter is or the ability to convey information is important, and because the skill to interpreting requires certain level of maturity, certain level of skill, we need to use a qualified interpreter as well. You as teachers and administrators have to relay information that is critical. And therefore, we have to use an interpreter that has been qualified, has been trained, because again, it requires a certain level of skill and maturity to conduct this job. So one of the things that I want to make a little parenthesis in this presentation. I'm going to send you via email this entire presentation. And on this presentation, you will see this little icon that you see on the right lower corner. It has a printer and it has a floppy disk. Those are all the presentation is important, but if you want to say paper or whatever, these ones that have this icon are the ones that are the most important of these presentations. I want you guys to make a note of these ones if you guys want to print it or keep it handy. Those are the ones that you want to take away from this presentation. So the reason why we want to use a qualified interpreter is because, again, we have to protect ourselves in the district against liability. Qualified interpreters possess and demonstrate proficiency in the language on both the target language and the source language. They also have the ability to interpret effectively and accurately and also impartially. And that is important. We don't want the interpreter to take a side. They also use a specialized vocabulary, and also they maintain confidentiality as well. They follow a strict ethical code of conduct that have to be maintained at all times. And I want you guys to read bullet number 3 and 4. Being bilingual doesn't mean that a person is qualified to be an interpreter or translate information. And bullet number 4 is being bilingual doesn't mean that a person is able to translate or interpret information, right? So again, it's the same, but I just want to emphasize that. Again, sometimes we feel tempted to say, oh yeah, you're bilingual, come back here and interpret for me, right? But there's a risk involved in that, and there's a potential liability issue that you could be putting yourself in or the district in if you use someone who is not a qualified or trained interpreter. Here at the district, we train and facilitate that training specifically for interpreters a few times a year. And I can say that our interpreters are definitely qualified and have the experience to conduct interpreting and translation, some of them. And again, we want to protect you and we want to ensure that information you are receiving is accurate. Any comments on this? Any comments, questions on this? Or Betty, do you want to share something too?
The thing that I crossed my mind when I saw those two is that when often students are used to do the interpretation, and then at that point, you know, we do have like at the high school level cases where a parent chooses the older kids going to do the interpretation or students, you know. So it's really like we are supposed to, as district, provide interpretation, and once again, and sometimes like we use the students to do interpretation for other students, but then that's when we're breaking confidentiality, because the other student might be sharing with other students what he has, the information that he has to pass on the family of the other students. So just that came to my mind. That's the reason why we should always go to a qualified interpreter for this information.
I know, definitely. Thank you, Beatriz. And one of the things that why interpreters are important is that, I mean, the confidentiality aspect is big. I mean, that is big, big, big. And I work as an interpreter in the medical setting too, sometimes, and also in the legal setting. And confidentiality there is vital and crucial. You don't want to break that confidentiality, because that'd be huge lawsuits, or in the legal setting, potential mistrials if certain confidentiality aspect get broken. So definitely, yes. So truth is, trusting a non-professional entails some risk, and we don't want to get involved in those risks. So that's why using a qualified interpreter is important. Again, it's not just about the language. In addition to speaking the source language and the target language, there are other skills that have to be used while interpreting, which is the mental dexterity, bicultural competency, many other skills. So please remember that. Again, the interpreter at times may also be aware of cultural differences, such as personal space. I mean, some countries, this varies from country to country, but interpreters who work in community settings with participants from other cultural backgrounds may also come from difficulties conveying a language if certain cultural differences are quite present, right? And our interpreters are aware of some of those cultural differences and cultural nuances. So that's why it's important to use those qualified interpreters, because they understand that, right? And sometimes those differences could be elusive to someone who is not trained in those ones. So again, you could be faced with cultural gaps in communication, because again, those nuances that could be elusive by an untrained interpreter. And I think we talked about that, disclosing personal information. Some people are reluctant to share personal information. And sometimes that varies from culture to culture. And these interpreters are aware of that. So again, I just want to make a summary of what to use a qualified interpreter. Again, a qualified interpreter repeats the language, the original message accurately, and has a complete possession of the communication, right? Without adding and omitting or changing the information or the intended message. Is knowledge about the culture of the speaker, and understands that the purpose of the interpreter is just to be the voice of a client. And I cannot emphasize this enough. When the interpreter is on the role of as an interpreter, I'm not talking as an advocate, I'm not talking as a cultural broker, I'm not talking as an advocate of any kind, I'm just talking as an interpreter. The purpose of the interpreter is just to be the voice of a client. And I pride myself to say that when I'm on as an interpreter, I'm not there to be a facilitator. I'm not there to be an advocate of him or her. I'm just there to be his voice and your voice. I'm just an object there. I just an instrument as you have as a pen, as a computer. I'm just a tool at your disposal there to facilitate the communication. Right? I'm not on one side or the other. I'm just there to facilitate the communication in any way possible, right? And more importantly, an interpreter is ethic and follows ethic regulations as well. So that is important of using a qualified interpreter. So we already tackled the first segment of our training, and which is, I think, one of the most important ones. Any questions or comments that you guys have? Any comments? We're doing good on time, so I want to make sure that I also take some time to address some of your questions or comments.
Ricky, I just wanted to comment something about, repeating the original message and just coming across some situations in the district. It's like you do interpretation, like when we make calls, and I think it's, especially with the liaisons, when the interpretation shouldn't be here. This is, like, can you tell this mom this, and that? Because unless you are providing that, in a written form, then you are able to pass the message exactly the way the administrator wants to. But I think we want, for best practice, if you need to communicate with the family, the best way will be to have the administrator and the liaison that will be acting as an interpreter at that time, to be able to pass the information or the message to the family. Also at that time, it is our job as liaisons to just have one role and not two, to be interpreters. And so we're always with issue that you always want to advocate for the family, but at that point, there's a difference between advocating and doing the interpretation or for the family. And I think that sometimes we were kind of like between that, and kind of like, you want to be able to advocate. So in any time you feel like there is a conflict between having the interpretation and and having the liaison and interpreter advocating, you can always have the extra person to do the interpretation job, or myself supporting the liaison to just be the interpreter and have the liaison take the role as advocate. I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Beatriz, and I agree with you. I think mixing both roles of interpreter and advocate could be conflictive. I agree with you, and I think you touched an excellent point, which is the next point that we're going to talk about, which is how to use an interpreter effectively. And I want to show you guys a video. This video is a very short video, but it effectively shows how to work with an interpreter. So this setting is believe it's a housing setting. They're talking about housing, but the concepts are the same, or the principles are the same. So pay attention to the things that they do well and the things that they don't do so well. So how to work with an interpreter, okay? So send me a message when you are listening to the video and let me know if you can hear it, okay?
This video will show you how to work with an interpreter if you need help speaking with another person in a different language. What is an interpreter? An interpreter makes it possible for two people who do not speak the same language to understand one another. The interpreter does this
Perfect. Okay, yeah, excellent.
by listening to the words you say and orally translating them exactly into words in another language. Now we will show you some examples of how to and how not to work with an interpreter.
Tell her I need to ask her some questions so I can understand her situation better.
Stop. This is all wrong. To avoid confusion, speak directly to the other person as if he or she could understand you. Do not use phrases like he said, she said, tell him, tell her. This is how the conversation should go.
I need to ask you a few questions so I can understand your situation better.
Quisiera hacerle unas preguntas para ver si puedo entender la situación mejor.
Sí, gracias.
Yes, thank you.
Much better. Remember to always speak directly to the other person. Now, let's look at another example of how to work with an interpreter.
When did you initially move into the apartment?
¿Cuándo comenzó a vivir en el apartamento?
Pues en el 2006. No recuerdo exactamente. Creo que era en el invierno. Estaba nevando. Creo que el 3 de enero. No, el 5 de enero.
It was in 2006, January 5th.
Freeze. First of all, the interpreter should repeat the words you say exactly as you say them. The interpreter should not add, leave out, summarize, or change anything to what you say. Let's try that again.
When did you initially move into the apartment?
¿Cuándo comenzó a vivir en el apartamento?
Pues en el 2006. No recuerdo exactamente. Tuvo que haber sido en el invierno. Estaba nevando. Quizás el 3 de enero. No, el 5 de enero.
Well, it was 2006. I don't remember exactly, but it was winter because it was snowing. I don't remember exactly. Maybe it was January 3rd. No, it was January 5th.
Much better. On to the next example of how to work with an interpreter.
Did you give a security deposit?
¿Di un depósito de garantía?
¿Qué es eso?
Ella se refiere al dinero que está reclamando, lo que le pagó al dueño al principio, por si acaso se dañaba algo en el apartamento.
Hold it. If you don't understand the question, it is the job of the person asking the question to explain the question to you. It is not the job of the interpreter to explain the question to you. Let's see what should have happened.
Did you give a security deposit?
¿Usted pagó un depósito de garantía?
¿Qué es eso?
What is that?
Besides the rent, did you give the landlord any money before you moved in?
Además del pago del alquiler mensual, ¿le dio al propietario algún dinero antes de comenzar a vivir en el apartamento?
Now we're getting it. Let's look at one more example of how to work with an interpreter.
Did you take pictures before you moved out?
¿Tomó fotos antes de mudarse?
No, en realidad no se me ocurrió. No pensé que tendría ningún problema.
Qué pena, sin fotos no tiene caso.
Stop, stop, stop. The interpreter should never give his or her opinion on what is being said, nor offer you advice about it. Let's try that again.
Did you take any pictures before you moved out?
¿Tomó fotos antes de mudarse?
No, en realidad no se me ocurrió.
No, I didn't really think about it.
Now that you've learned the right and wrong way to use an interpreter, here are a few rules to remember. Speak loudly and clearly enough so that the interpreter can hear you well. Speak at a normal pace or a little slower if you are usually a fast speaker. You may stop from time to time if you feel the interpreter needs to catch up with you. Wait for the interpreter to finish talking before speaking. Always remember, everything you say will be interpreted. If there is something you do not want the other person to know, do not say it to the interpreter. Do not expect the interpreter to soften your words or the other person's. The interpreter must keep everything you say confidential. This means that he or she may not share anything that you say with anyone else. For more information, contact Legal Services.
Ricardo, can you let Holly in from the waiting room?
I just
New
did.
Jersey. Thanks for
Okay.
watching.
Yes, I just did. Sometimes it's hard for me to see the waiting room when I'm presenting, but just did. You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you. Again, if you miss any section of this training, I'm emailing this information to you guys. So here's some tips to working with an interpreter. Again, feel free to save this or highlight this portion of the training. Again, I think the video was clearly enough. Again, speak with the interpreter directly, speak to the client directly. If you have the ability to do this, have a small debrief or a small meeting with the interpreter prior to the visit, so that you can actually tell the interpreter what it's about. You know, sometimes it's easier for the interpreter to prepare, especially if the meeting has perhaps a particular type of language or a particular type of content. Sometimes it's good for the interpreter to know ahead of time so that he or she can be prepared a little bit ahead of time. But if you can't, that's okay too as well. Always face and speak directly with client is important. And some of the things that they talk to in the video, such as make eye contact with the client and speak in the first person using the I voice, right? It's important for you to do that always. And one of the things that I cannot emphasize enough, remember to speak slowly and in a normal tone, passing it after each sentence throughout the conversation. This way that can ensure the interpreter to time so that she can convey the message without missing anything. And one of the things that is always helpful is to avoid to speaking in jargon or slang and avoid acronyms. Because sometimes the thing with acronyms, this is the thing with acronyms. If you speak with an acronym, we have to interpret that acronym into the right, into the complete sentence, right? And that kind of takes a lot of time. And by the time you're speaking again, we're already behind. So that always helps to don't speak in acronyms. And also one of the things that happens sometimes is the questions. Just ask just one question at a time so that we can have the ability to relay the question and convey the answer back to you. And also one thing that I always encourage teachers and administrators is from time to time confirm understanding. That way we can ensure that the communication bridge remains intact. And again, sometimes our clients, our parents do not, they are very polite and they don't want to make you feel that you're not being clear enough and they don't want to hurt your feelings. So sometimes they may nod and as a sign that they are understanding, but it's important for you to, from time to time, try to confirm that they are understanding the content or the message that you're trying to convey, right? And again, one of the things that I always tell people is that the role of the interpreter is to interpret everything that you say. Therefore, if you don't want something that you don't want to be interpreted, well, don't say, right? So don't say nothing you don't want to be interpreted, because again, we will say it. We will say, we're like parrots. We'll say everything you say, including cuss words and side conversations. So we will say everything, and so be mindful of that. Also try to avoid using family members or friends to interpret, because again, they're not qualified interpreter. And please, 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 please never use children to interpret for legal and ethical reasons, right? Any questions or comments, anything you guys want to add? I'm going to show you guys a video And we're almost to the last part of our training, but I want to show you guys a video of the importance of not to use children when interpreting. There are dangers and potentially serious outcomes inherent in relying on underage interpreters and untrained bilingual children. I mean, some people say gives them maturity and helps them develop themselves, but I think the issues of having underage interpreters outweighs the benefits, in my opinion. But do you guys have any comments of so far what we have shared so far this training? Comments, questions? Okay, I'm going to show you guys a video, and this video is actually a pretty cool movie. It's called Spanglish. It's a pretty interesting video. It's with Adam Sandler and Paz Vega. So let me give you guys a little bit of context. So a Mexican immigrant and single mother, Flor, that's her name, finds housekeeping work with Deborah and John Klansky. John Klansky is a renowned chef and a very well-off couple with 2 children of their own. And again, she's the housekeeper, again, not just for the surplus, but that's the movie. So when Flor admits that she can handle the schedule because of her daughter, the mom decides that they should just move into the home of the Klasky's. And there's some cultural clashes that happen when they move in, right? The mom of the house takes the little girl shopping, and the mom doesn't like that. And also the Flor also helps one of the children at the home with some clothing, and it's a whole mess, right? And in one occasion, John gives Christina, the little girl, money for collecting sea glass from the beach because he wanted to build something with it, and the mom didn't like that. Right? So let's see what happens, right, in this interaction again. If you guys want to share your thoughts on this, that'd be fantastic. So let's share this.
No se meta con los hijos de las otras personas.
You leave someone else's child
Creo que no
alone.
es difícil de entender. ¿Qué no se da
It is
cuenta que
simple,
los
no?
niños se
It
confunden?
is too easy
Si
for
los papás le dicen una
children
cosa,
feel
y luego
contradiction.
otra cliente va y le
And
dice
it
otra.
encourages questions
Seguro
within
se sienten
parents.
seguros de que
And
tienen la
that,
razón. Tienen
and
seguros de que
that makes
tienen
them
la
less
razón.
safe.
Mire,
Look,
su esposa se la lleva a caminar.
your wife takes her for little tours.
Le cambia el peinado.
And she changes her hair.
Usted le da dinero.
And you give her money.
Tome,
Here.
quédese con su dinero.
Take back the money.
No estoy enojada con usted.
I didn't really
Solo
mean to be angry to
Me
you.
deja llevar por la emoción.
Only emotional for me.
What about hypocritical?
¿Qué dijo?
Hipócrita.
Yes, you heard me. It's not like you didn't do the same thing.
No.
Yes, you did. So why don't you go lecture yourself? You won't need a translator for that one. I mean, what am I lately? A recycling bin? Anybody dumping your garbage? Hope I make something useful out of it?
Hipocresía no.
Yes, you did the same thing. You think I don't know about you altering those outfits for Bernie? She tells me her stuff. So am I missing something? Is there really a difference between that and what you're complaining about? Excuse me.
No hay diferencia, yo interferí.
There's no difference. I interfered.
You're kidding me. It's just
pretty wild to say something to somebody and have the other person just concede the point. I'm dazed here.
Estoy muy sorprendida que me dieras la razón.
Well, that was a fantastic interaction between the mom and this John Klasky chef. Again, there are some positive outcomes for being an interpreter or translator for using a child being an interpreter. However, in my opinion, the dangers and potential serious outcome, again, of using underage and untrained bilingual children definitely outweigh the potential benefits of having paid on such a challenge of communicating on behalf of their parents. Again, it's a complex process and require proper training. And this type of pressure definitely could increase the stress for children, especially if the children have to interpret matters that are beyond their age and maturity level. They may feel overburdened because they are given a responsibility that is beyond their years, and sometimes have to be exposed to issues and situations beyond their understanding. So again, I'm not questioning the skill of the little girl. I think she's even better than me, so I can say that. But I think the maturity level and to be aware of things that are not age appropriate, I definitely outweigh the benefits, right? So just keep that in mind. So again, we're almost wrapping up, but again, following these tips will help you make the interpretation process run smoothly and make the communication easily, right? Again, remember that a qualified interpreter is impartial, is professional, and is there for both parties. He or she will never offer his opinion or her opinion, and will never enter into a private discussion with your client or your parent, right, or the student. I listed here a list of best practices that you can follow while working with an interpreter. Again, try to arrange for always a qualified interpreter. If possible, schedule additional time for meeting with the interpreter so that you can give the interpreter a few pointers of what the meeting is about. Again, if this is possible, an interpreter will never discuss confidentiality. You step to number 4, discuss confidentiality. An interpreter will never discuss confidentiality. I don't know why I wrote that, but never will discuss confidentiality. So please remind the interpreter of the seriousness of the meeting if that warrants it. But again, please be mindful that the interpreter will never discuss confidentiality. Again, arrange seating, and this is important so that you are making eye-to-eye contact with the mom or the parent or the student, and they speak directly to the client as if he or she is understanding your language. Use plain English, define legal terms, pause regularly so that they can have the opportunity to pause, and maintain a three-way communication. In other words, talk, let the interpreter speak, talk, let the interpreter speak. And it's a nice cycle of conversation, right? Let me see the time. Yep, we have time. I want to show you guys another video. This will be the last video I'm going to show you. This is how to use an interpreter on parent-teacher meeting. And these are great tools, great do's and great don'ts of what to do, okay? So let me share this video with you.
To interpret, and if I hear you going too fast, I'm going to signal you like this.
School-home communication. When parents are supportive of their child's education, learning is improved. Meaningful school-home communication is essential in order for parents to support their child's learning. Parent-teacher conferences are a valuable way to accomplish the communication goal. However, communication to a parent that doesn't speak English can be challenging you'll need to use an interpreter. Throughout this video, you will learn some valuable tips on how to communicate successfully to a non-English speaking parent through an interpreter. Usually, the participants at a parent-teacher conference are the student's general education teacher, parents, and sometimes the student. Occasionally, the ELL teacher, the principal, and the school counselor could be invited to participate if the parent requests it or if it is needed in helping the student achieve academic success. Interpreter, a person who orally converts the spoken word from one language to another. Translator, a person who converts a text to another language. In this video, we will discuss the role of the interpreter. Interpreter's professional conduct and code of ethics. Let's consider the code of ethics of an interpreter. The code of ethics stresses confidentiality, impartiality, discretion, and professional distance. Trained interpreters abide by this code of ethics. Accuracy. Interpreters shall always thoroughly and faithfully conserve the tone, spirit, and meaning of the source language message. Interpreters shall not counsel, give advice, omit, add anything, or express personal opinions to an individual for whom they are interpreting. Cultural sensitivity. Interpreters shall be culturally competent, sensitive, and respectful of the individuals they serve. Confidentiality. Interpreters shall not divulge any information obtained through their assignments. This includes not discussing or reporting any matter in which they are or have been engaged. Professionalism. Interpreters need to be punctual, prepared, and dressed in a manner that is appropriate for the situation. They shall develop their skills and knowledge through professional training, continuing education, and interaction with colleagues and specialists in related fields. Neutrality. Interpreters shall always be neutral, impartial, and unbiased. They shall not discriminate on the basis of gender, age, disability, race, color, or national origin. This also includes socioeconomic or educational status and religious or political beliefs. Proficiency. Interpreters shall ask for clarification of concepts, words, and meaning as needed. An interpreter shall also evaluate their ability to interpret. If an interpreter has any reservations about their competency in any assignment, they must immediately notify the parties and offer to withdraw their services without fear of retaliation from anyone involved. The first step towards successful communication is the understanding that the goals of a teacher and those of the non-English speaking parent often differ. Often, parents from other cultures, when sending their child to school, believe their main responsibility is that the child is well dressed, fed, and that the child is respectful, mannerly, and well-behaved. When starting the conference, remember to begin with positive information. Compliment the parent for their influence in a positive area of their child's behavior.
Thank you for coming today.
Gracias por venir hoy.
I'd like to begin by telling you how wonderful of a student Rhody is.
Me gustaría comentarle hoy.
With this in mind, let's examine some steps for successful communication. Brief. Briefly discuss with the interpreter the main topics that will be discussed at the meeting. Share with the interpreter background information on test or academic terminology you will use. The interpreter may use this moment also to ask questions and clarify roles and expectation.
Hello, my name is Alexandra Shan. I'm your Spanish interpreter. I will be interpreting everything you say, and I would like to ask you that every 2 sentences to pause for me to interpret. And if I hear you going too fast, I'm going to signal you like this.
Okay, sure. Thanks so much for coming. During this conference with Rhody's parents, I'm going to be talking about 2 concerns. One of those concerns is reading, and the other is math.
Okay.
In reading, I'm going to be discussing his DIBELS scores.
And what is DIBELS?
DIBELS is a fluency test that we give here at school.
Okay.
In math, I'm going to be talking about his multiplication tables.
Clear communication. In addressing academic issues, choose only 1 or 2 key points to discuss. To discuss too many academic issues can give the impression that you are scolding the parent for not doing his or her job. Keep it simple. Some words do not translate meaning by meaning. Use standard vocabulary.
Every week or so, we give a dynamic indicators of basic early literacy skills test. That's known as a DIBELS test.
Se llama el examen de garabatos.
¿Un examen de garabatos?
A scribbles test?
Oh no, a DIBELS test.
Oh no, un examen DIBELS.
A DIBELS test monitors their fluency and studies have proven.
Body language. Observe nonverbal communication. Be aware of what message either party's body language is conveying. This is an important clue to know if the message is being understood. And remember, when the parent speaks, look at the parent, not the interpreter. Seating arrangements. Arrange seating so that you are facing the parent. Have the interpreter sit slightly behind the parent or you. Remember, the interpreter is not a participant. He is your voice. Pace. Be straightforward. Keep your phrases and sentences short and concise. Pause often to allow for high accuracy interpretation. Practice good rules of conversational turn-taking. Be patient. Interpretation requires more time than single language communication.
Thank you for coming. I'd
Gracias
like
por
to
venir.
introduce you to
Me
our
gustaría
school principal,
introducirla
Mrs.
a
Lehman,
la
and our
asistente
school counselor,
directora,
Mrs.
Mrs.
Berkman.
Lehman, y al consejero, Mr. Lehman. Tenemos algunas preocupaciones acerca
We've
de
actually
su
seen a
hijo en la
lot of
escuela.
defiant behavior on his
Hemos
part.
visto
Wondered
muchos
if you've seen the same
comportamientos
thing at
malos.
home.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, so I'm going to skip a little bit. The other parts are important, but I want to respect your time. So as you can see, there are many skills that they taught us on this video. Again, takeaways are pace, debrief with interpreter, and speaking directly to the client, and a few others. So,
Gracias por.
I think I talked about this. We skip that one too. I have a role play video. It's a little too long, but you guys can watch it on your own time. But it's pretty much the same video as the conference video you just watched, but with actual Shelter School District employees and interpreters. Again, this was the training this afternoon. If you have any further questions on how to use an interpreter or to book interpretation services, or if you'd like to schedule a meeting with an interpreter in general to ask questions, feel free to contact your building Spanish family liaison, and we can definitely arrange that. Beatriz, do you have anything you want to share before we finish this training?
No, I just, I think it's just important to mention when you have any interpretation, Spanish interpretation that you want in your building, the first point of contact should be the family liaison. So far, the only ones that don't have someone like in the building all the time is Cedar and Choice, but I am your Spanish interpreter. If you need any other languages than Spanish, such as Mama Canjobal, request has to be submitted to Crystal or myself. We like at least 24 to 48 hours in advance, but I know emergencies happen, and we are always prepared to try our best to be able to provide interpreters. We are working really hard also on trying to update the home language. I know in the past, if a family didn't speak English, we automatically say Spanish, but that's not the case. We have a lot of mom speakers and Canjobal speakers. And, when you're doing the interpretation in Spanish, often you're like realizing that they are not fully understanding the message. So it is very important that if you have any needs for mom in Canjobal, to let us know to be able to provide interpreters for Spanish interpretation. First person should be your family liaison. And then if you need, of course, during conference time, you will need more than one interpreter. And we usually are pretty good about creating a schedule where you have enough people to be able to do the interpretation. And I just want to say, Ricky, thank you so much for all the work that you do with our interpretations and providing the training for all of us. Thank you.
You're welcome, my pleasure. And again, if you guys have questions, feel free to voice them at any time. Feel free to email them to me or to Beatriz. But before we finish, do you guys have any comments, questions?
Thank you for giving me the better understanding. I don't think I really, I mean, now it's very clear, but difference between interpreter and translator, that make a lot of difference in my brain. So thank you, appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's definitely two different set of skills for sure. Like,
I was gonna, sorry to interrupt. I was gonna ask, is there, do we provide training as a district if we have folks in our building, let's say, who are bilingual? Would we train them to be interpreters, or could we do that?
that's a great question. Well, that is not something I can answer myself as far as training available for staff. I can tell you that we do train our family liaisons, and the contact you have there for liaisons, Spanish family liaisons, we do provide training, a very substantial training, but there are staff, possibly teachers, administrators who are bilingual, who potentially be training in that. I think maybe Crystal can go over that, definitely.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep. Well, again, if you guys come up with other questions such as what tools that you ask, resources for training for interpreters, feel free to email those questions to Crystal. She can definitely answer those ones. But if you guys have any questions about booking an interpreter, getting an interpreter, how to get an interpreter to Zoom, this can definitely help you with that as well. Again, thank you so much. I'll email the presentation to Crystal, and she'll email it to each one of you so that you can have it in the records. And so that I guess she can also credit you for this training as well. So again, thank you so much for your time and the privilege of meeting you. It's been a pleasure. And again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Bye-bye. Mucho gusto.